My name is Sarah Meidinger, and we are currently on my family farm near Ashley, North Dakota, and about 2 miles south, or 2 miles from the South Dakota border.
Is this the farm you grew up on?
I did, yes. I spent all of my childhood here.
And tell me what type of chores you did as a young child on the farm.
As a young child, I did many different things. I would help my dad if he was planting. We'd help clean out drills and things like that. Also with the cattle, we would help my dad open gates, help work cattle, help take them to the pastures. If a cow was sick, we'd round a cow up with him. Just many different duties specifically with the cows. And okay, I have to stop now.
That's okay. I'm going to ask you, when do you remember starting working on the farm, helping out on the farm?
I was very young, not so much working on the farm, but being around the farm. My grandparents lived with us for a while on the farm, and so even when we had milk cows, I was out here. I would drive my little tricycle in the gutters on the farm. So I was already doing that. I would be in the tractor with my dad when he was planting or, taking care of cattle. I would be in the corrals with cattle. So really it was just like if my parents needed help rounding up cattle, or driving to and from fields, that's what I did. I can't think of a time when I probably didn't help with that.
Why don't you tell us what type of farm you have here? What type of farm, what type of crops, what type of animals are on the farm?
We currently have more of a ranch style farm now. We have cow-calf pairs, so my dad calves every spring, and he does have a few that calve in the fall. When I was growing up, we did have some cropland where he would plant soybeans, sunflowers, wheat. It kind of varied every year, but he did quit that, I think, when I was about middle school, high school age, and then did more with cattle. So we always did have some sort of form of cattle, whether that had been cow-calf pairs, dairy, or just calves that we had, but now it's ranch style mostly. So okay.
Do you have a sibling?
I have a sister. She is 5 years younger than me, and so growing up, for the first 5 years of my life, I was here by myself. Obviously, my grandparents lived out here until I think I was about 5, and it was right before my sister was born. So I was a little bit spoiled. So I had my grandparents out here, I had my parents out here. And so if I didn't want to listen to my parents, I would go over to my grandparents and hang out with them. And, so when my sister came about, that was a little bit different for me. But it was really her and I out here for the most part, because my parents did do a lot in the field. My mom started working in town at the hospital when I was in middle school, so she wasn't around like in the summers a lot of times. So my sister and I were here, and we really had to lean on each other and do things with each other, and really make that kind of about us. And we were able to go to town, we were able to go see my grandma and see friends and stuff, but for the most part we were here. So, and it wasn't like my parents didn't buy us stuff. We had a swimming pool, we had we had toys, we had enough stuff, so we were pretty okay for the most part.
Did you have to take a bus to school?
We did have to take a bus to school every day. So he would usually come pick us up, the bus driver, at between 7:15 and 7:30 every morning, and then drop us off around 4:30 at night. And now that depended on school activities and stuff. So as we got older, we were more involved in school activities. And half of that was so that we didn't have to ride the bus. But we also wanted to be involved in more things to kind of be in town and be around our friends and stuff and get more acclimated to school. So, but definitely the roads can be treacherous out here, and there were many times in the winter where the bus went in the ditch and we would end up, hanging out in the bus for an hour or two until my dad would come pull us out, or someone else's dad would come pull us out. So yeah, it was a lot of driving in rural life and hoping for the best.
But how many kids were on the bus?
It varied. I would say probably a good 10 to 15 if it was full. As we got older, that lessened, so maybe about 8. Now, my parents made me ride the bus pretty much my entire childhood, even when I was a senior, unless I had a school activity going on. So that was why I would try to get into more school activities so I didn't have to ride the bus. But yeah, we definitely rode the bus a lot, so.
Now, you went to high school. After high school, where did you go after high school?
After high school, I actually went to MSUM, so Moorhead.
So no one knows what that is, so you have to say Moorhead.
Moorhead State, Minnesota State University, Moorhead. I went to out of high school. So I moved to Fargo and just kind of graduated from Minnesota State University, Moorhead, and then I moved around to Grand Forks, Bismarck, and then now I'm back in Fargo working at NDSU in the library.
What was your degree? Tell us what your degree was in.
My degree at Minnesota State University, Moorhead, was in communication sciences and disorders. And then now I'm currently going to Kent State University online to get my master's in library science degree.
Have you ever thought about coming back to the farm? College.
I had thoughts about coming back to the farm, and my dad has been sick for the last 2.5 years, in and out of the hospital, and so I've really kind of been helping out a little bit more than I was used to, because after graduation I didn't come home and help as much. But you know, kind of coming home and helping with all that stuff, I was like, oh, I kind of enjoy this again. And so I don't know if I ever will, but it's a possibility. So
your mom went to work when you were relatively young. Is that something a lot of farm wives have to do?
A lot of farm wives do have second jobs in town. And when I say second jobs, I mean the farm is your primary job. So I mean you're 24/7 working on the farm. But when you're a small farmer and you're not corporate, you don't have the money necessarily to always keep the farm sufficient. So oftentimes wives will take a second or even third job in town or surrounding areas, and then come home and work with their husbands on the farm. So for instance, my mom, she works at the hospital, so she's working from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., comes home. My dad says, you know, we had a cow that calf, can you help me put her in the barn? Or can you help me fix fence? So she never really gets a break from work. So it's pretty common around this area that many farm wives do work in town.
It's pretty tough, I would think.
Yep. I would think it's very tough, and you know, I kind of live a life where I have many irons in the fire, but I can't imagine working a full-time job and then coming home and doing even more physical labor for another 8 hours. I would assume she's always tired.
When you were growing up, did your parents talk to you about maybe staying on the farm, or did they encourage you to get an education? What do you think their thoughts were?
My parents were very education focused, and I myself was very education focused. It was never my intention to stay in a small town. I had bigger dreams, bigger ideas, bigger thoughts, and you know, kind of looking back at it now, I don't really mind coming back to small town. But you know, back when I was growing up, I just wanted to get out of here. And now I'm like, this isn't so bad.
So how old are you?
I am 34.
So people in your generation that you went to high school with, did many of them stay on the farm, or did most of them leave?
There were a few that stayed on the farm of my classmates. There are a few that left and came back. So I graduated with 14 in my class, and I would say 7 or 8 of those classmates either stayed or left and then came back and raised families here.
Do you ever get in touch with them?
I do. Facebook is a very nice thing to have for keeping in touch with your classmates, and so it's nice to see what they're doing and what I'm doing, and seeing that they are back in this area, and or they've married somebody from back around these areas, because that's another thing. Some people have married people from Wishick or Edgeley or around here and kind of stayed around here, so, and raised their family. So it's kind of nice to see that. And oftentimes when my dad's in town or my mom's working, she knows and he knows a lot of my classmates too, so they keep in touch.
Why don't you tell me what some of your favorite chores were when you were growing up, and then we'll talk about what maybe some of your least favorite chores were. So what were your favorite chores?
My favorite chores actually revolved around cleaning grain bins. So it wasn't too tedious. We always had a shop vac, and so we'd go in there and we'd shop vac the grain around and clean it up a little bit. And I would always have, like, back then we had the CD players, so you have iPods now and smartphones and stuff, but we had the CD player, so I just put that on and like vacuum, and it was pretty easy. So that was one of my favorite chores. I think too, like when my dad had cows that calved, and just being able to walk in there and see them, and you know, if we had to bottle feed them or bucket feed them, that was pretty fun for me too.
Okay, what about your least favorite thing you had to do on the farm?
Some of my least favorite chores.
They're gonna skew the channel.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
What was your least favorite thing? Why don't we start with your favorite thing? I think that was a little windy during that.
Okay.
So we'll start with favorite thing.
So I had a couple of favorite chores. One of them was cleaning out the grain bins, because we were able to use the shop vac, and then I could put my CD player on and just go to town and clean. And I think another favorite chore of mine was when we had cows that calve, like just being able to go in there, and if we had to bottle feed them or, you know, help round them up or whatever, it's kind of an adorable time here on the farm. So those were definitely two of my most favorite chores.
What was your least favorite chore?
I have many least favorite chores. One of them being, we sometimes had to help my dad manure the barns, and he would try to say, well, then you can rollerblade in the barn then. And we'd be like, okay, well, we'll help you then. And so we did get to rollerblade in the barn, but that was just one of the worst things I had to do. Also,
What did you actually have to do?
we would have to, and it really probably wasn't that much work in hindsight, but we would have to like kind of shovel the corners and, you know, really get in there. And he would use, you know, a skid steer or bobcat or even the tractor to kind of get most of that out. But even just, you know, kind of cleaning in the smell was like, so, but then when it was clean, we got to rollerblade in the barn, so that was pretty fun. Another one of my least favorite chores was when we had to help do roundup to take the cows to the pasture, because we have three-wheelers, so we don't have four-wheelers, and three-wheelers are just basically a four-wheeler with one less wheel. But so, and I guess I'm not the best at understanding directions, and neither was my sister at the time, and we were in high school, so we also didn't really want to deal with it. We wanted to be at home, you know, watching TV. So my dad would say, you know, pay attention to me. We're going to go in this direction, and if this hand is your hand, Sarah, and this hand is your hand, Tracy. And we would get turned around, and we led the cattle like on a completely different path, and my dad was getting frustrated, I was getting frustrated, my sister was getting frustrated, and I mean, eventually we got the cows to the pasture, but it was just something I was like, I quit. I don't ever want to do this again. And now it's fine, but back then it was just one of my least favorite things to do.
So the worst could have been on a horse.
That's true.
I thought with your sister. Oh, yeah, what is your sister doing now?
My sister lives in Grand Forks, and she works at Altru in the hospital. So she is, I always get this wrong, but she's a medical lab technologist. And really what that encompasses is she checks samples of things for cancer and, you know, other medical ailments, things like that. So.
Do you ever think about staying on the farm, or?
No, she's been pretty adamant about not wanting to do that. So.
When you were growing up, I know your mother was gone, but did you and your mom, did mom teach you how to cook, and did you cook meals for the family?
Yeah, growing up, because my parents were in the field a lot and my mom worked, I did end up doing a lot of household chores. So I did learn how to cook, and I maybe wasn't the best cook, but macaroni and cheese, just, simple things like that. But I did have to cook for my sister and I a lot, lunches and things, and do laundry and dishes and, keep the house clean. So we did have inside chores as well.
Did you ever get involved with your German-Russian culture at all?
The German-Russian culture was one thing I really didn't get involved in, and I don't think I really understood it at that time either, because it was just so ingrained and blended. And around McIntosh County, it is still ingrained, and I don't think we maybe see it from the outside looking in like I do now that I live in Fargo and understand its value more so. And I think, my grandparents didn't really talk about it. They didn't teach us German. They preferred to say things in secret to each other in German, or swear at each other in German, things like that, so we didn't pick that up. So, things for me like Kuchen and strudels and cheese buttons were just things that I knew about. And then when I moved to college in Fargo, I was like, oh, this doesn't exist. Like, this isn't normal. So yeah, now I want to be more involved in it, and I enjoy it, and I want to learn more about the history of it. But growing up, I think it was just second nature to me.
Do you think the role of women on farms has changed, even in your lifetime?
I think the role of women on farms has definitely changed. I would say, back with my grandparents, that was kind of, my grandma kept the house clean, and those were kind of her tasks. And kind of seeing that generational switch from her to my mom, where my mom had the second job, she still comes and, makes sure the farm's okay and helps my dad, but she has that second job and that focus and is making money separately. And even now with my generation, where there are women that do help on the farm and take care of the farm, but we also have education, we have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and we're working, professional jobs, but at the same time, we're still working on the farm.
How about, once again, going back to some of your classmates, have you seen some of your classmates, some of your female classmates, either stay working on the farm or coming back, as you say, after a number of years?
I don't recall any of my female classmates staying on a farm, and I could be wrong about that, but some of my female classmates have come back to marry male farmers, but they still have the jobs in town, like at a bank or at the hospital. So they are still working those professional jobs, and I don't know exactly what level they have on the farm as far as physical work that they do.
From your observation, do you think it'd be more like a situation of your mom, that many of the farm wives aren't doing that traditional role, but are having to take on the role of sometimes, almost the breadwinner with the insurance and everything else?
I would say many of the wives are having to be that breadwinner to have the insurance, because if you're a farmer, you're self-employed. You have to buy your own insurance, and you don't have that employee insurance. You don't have a 401k. There's just many benefits that you don't have. And also, if you get hailed out, you may have insurance, but what does that insurance cover? So there's many things where the wives are having to be the breadwinners and having to bring in that extra income, so you can buy groceries and you can, keep your vehicles in line, and you can have insurance.
Pardon me. Have you noticed, or have you thought about over the years, that women that wanted to become farmers, if there's been any resistance to that, like from the male community, that they wanted to take a larger role, like with the machinery, with the cattle, and stay, you know, on the farm, not be that secondary role, if you will.
I would say there probably is resistance from males, and I don't know if it's even intentional resistance, because I think sometimes even when I come home and I work with my dad, you know, it's like, well, I'm not sure that you should be in the corral working with this cow, and it's like, well, I can do it, it's okay. And I think it's just more that they may worry that something would happen. But we do have a neighbor, and I think she's got to be like 80 something now, and her husband passed away pretty early on in life, and she actually took over the farm. And I think up until 2 years ago, she was a farmer. She did everything. She calved out, she planted, all of that stuff. So she was kind of one of the only female farmers that I ever knew that actually was a strict female farmer. So, and I think when people see things like that, then they go, oh, okay, females can do these types of things.
When we walk around your ranch here, what are some of the things you want to show us?
We have a little baby calf that we are bucket feeding right now. She's a twin, and the mom couldn't handle them both, so we're kind of taking care of her right now until she gets a little bigger and can be on her own. Definitely some of our barns I can show you, and just kind of just some things that I enjoyed growing up, and you know, whether or not my sister would hide and you know, from our parents and stuff around the farm, and so, or where we would walk, things like that, and just like to show you some of the cows that we have around here right now.
So when you were growing up, taking care of calves would have been something you did?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I not necessarily like gave calves shots or anything to make sure they were okay, but I definitely helped kind of round the calves up to get them with their moms, and or help work cattle so they could get the shots or so they could get out to pasture.
Were you involved with 4-H or Future Farmers at all?
I was not involved with 4-H or Future Farmers. I was more involved in like Future Business Leaders of America, Honor Society. I kind of shifted away from more of the typical farm kid clubs and did more of the other things, because back then my focus really wasn't on farming just because I lived it every day, and it wasn't my necessarily intention to want to live it the rest of my life. So
when you were going to high school, were there clusters of kids that wanted to get off the farm, and then there were clusters maybe that kids that, or cliques of kids that were interested in farming?
No, I wouldn't say that we really had farmers versus non-farmer cliques. We were so small that it was kind of, you know, we just hope we had a basketball team and enough people to play football and enough people to be in all of these clubs. So, and a lot of the farm kids like would be in football and basketball and stuff like that. So there wasn't really a clique in that regard.
Is there any disadvantage to going to a small school?
I think there were some disadvantages to going to a small school, and I talk about this a lot with my coworkers who went to larger schools. I would have liked more opportunities to be able to have more of the honors classes, different kinds of clubs, and just be able to kind of meet different kinds of people, because a lot of the people that were in my school I was related to. So it would have been nice to kind of branch out from that.
A little more variety.
Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you thought we'd be talking about today you'd like to mention?
No, I think we've covered a lot of topics that just kind of, I mean, maybe one topic that we haven't covered is the financial situations that many farmers face and how it does affect their kids. I mean, for instance, like what a lot of people don't know is that we didn't go on vacations when we were kids. Our vacations were, we went to Aberdeen, which is 45 minutes from here, on a rainy day to go pick out school clothes. or we were able to maybe go to a park. So we didn't go to Vegas. We didn't have these elaborate vacations that many kids get to have these days, because either we were financially strapped, or it was, planting time or calving time, just things like that. And also, if you end up getting hailed out for the season, or you have cows that die, and you have bank. Is he?
He's okay.
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 He's just whining.
So start again with if you end up getting held out for the season, you're saying.
For what?
You started saying if you get held out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's things like if you get hailed out for the season, or if you have a bunch of cows that die, because the price of a cow is like $1,000 to $3,000, and that's a big chunk of change for people. It's you lose that money and you don't get it back. So there's things like that you're financially strapped for a year, and it takes a while to build that up. And even when I was going to college, I was dependent under my parents, so financial aid was different for me, because let's say my dad sold 30 cows. Well, that's technically income, but he still has a loan to the bank. So he needs to pay the bank back, where he has some income, but that affects my financial aid, because they look at it as, oh, he made all of this money, but he didn't. And now I'm not getting my financial aid, and I have to pay. So there's all those variables to it where people think, wow, farmers make a lot of money, and farmers complain all the time that they don't have any money, but they have, they drive fancy new vehicles and this, that, and the other, and that's not true at all. So, and that's one of the things I really want to point out, especially working at NDSU, is because a lot of farm kids come into NDSU with those same situations that I had going to college, where, yeah, their parents sell cattle, they sell cropland, they harvest, and on paper it looks like you've made a lot of money, but you haven't, because you have all these other people to pay, and you have to pay yourself, and you have to make a living.